Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Missing Frames. This is the podcast where we watch all the movies we should have seen by this point in our lives. I'm your host, Shawn, and I am joined today by one of my favorite guests and one of my favorite people on this good green earth. That is one Mr. Matthew Schott. Matthew, welcome back.
Welcome back to me. Glad to be back.
You better be, because otherwise, why am I even talking to you? And we also have a dear friend who I've actually speaking to for the first time in many years, first time Missing Framer, and that would be one Mr. Trevor Black. Trevor, welcome to Missing Frames.
Thank you so much. You could say that I was the frame that was missing all along.
I could and I will, and I 100% agree. And today we're watching a beloved family classic. It's just grossed $1 billion in 2023. That is the Super Mario Brothers movie. Hold on, I'm checking my notes here. Oh, there's a 1993. Wait, we're watching the 1990. Matt, damn it, Matt. Okay, this is Matt's idea, everybody. I am sorry. I want to apologize sincerely from the get-go. This is all Matthew's fault, and Trevor, I guess this is your fault too, because you're the one of the three of us who has not seen this film. That's right. We're not watching the 2023 Super Mario Brothers film. We are watching the Super Mario Brothers film from 1993 that didn't gross anywhere near $1 billion. Barely. I don't think it made any money, actually. I think it lost a lot of money for the studio. And Trevor has never seen this. But Trevor, before we talk a bit about the film, I want to know, in general, are you a Mario Brothers fan? The video games or the wonderful complex lore that Mario has to offer?
Famously,
I know.
Complex.
I know as much as he is. He claims to be a plumber, but I don't think he spends much time doing that. I know sometimes he's a raccoon. Sometimes he's on fire. And there's an evil version of him. But despite working in games, it's one of those things that I've missed most of.
That's incredibly funny.
Yes.
That you're working in games. You're a video game composer, correct?
Oh yeah, that's me. That's my day job.
So but know nothing about the Mario Brothers.
Oh,
franchise.
I've played probably 5 minutes of each thing that Mario has to offer.
That's probably about as
and
much as you need to know.
Willfully admit
Yeah,
I should have
roughly.
done more.
It's true, but we won't hold it against you because you're doing the important thing in watching this film that is incredibly faithful to the game franchise. But Matthew, tell me, what is your experience with the Super Mario Brothers video games?
Extensive. I'm something of a historian. I helped Nintendo devise their famously controversial Mario timeline, but that is strict canon. No, I played.
You manage the Mario wiki as well, don't you?
Yeah, I'm chief moderator. Very strict. No, I think I've played probably every major Mario release and most of the esoteric stuff. I'll be referencing all of the important ones like Yoshi's Cookie, or just the game that's just called Yoshi, where you play as Mario. So
wasn't there a Yoshi game that it was called Yoshi, but it was basically Tetris?
Yeah, that's Yoshi.
That is it. Okay, so you're
it's
Mario
like,
in that game.
It's a crappier kind of puzzle Tetris thing where you got to make eggs. It's not very good. But Mario, I think is sort of the face of gaming. He's kind of the Mickey Mouse of video games, and he's very ubiquitous. And I saw this movie as a kid as like a big Super Mario World specifically fan. And I remember being a little confused, but kind of like weirdly drawn to it. Like there was something about its aesthetic that I was like, well, this isn't what I was expecting, but there's something interesting here. And as I sort of grew older, I came to respect the movie for the underappreciated classic that it is.
Would you say the scars have healed by this point in time?
I would
since
say
that first viewing.
Not only have the scars healed, but they now give me strength.
Do they remind you that
reverse
the
scars.
past is real?
Yes, exactly.
I think that's the idea. I think that if there's one thing that could sum up Mario, one phrase, it's the past is real. Again, the depth, the emotional depth and complexity is just overwhelming. I have a very similar pathway to this film as Matthew does, which is, I'd played the games as a kid. I was a fan. Never like big Mario fan, but I enjoy it, and I've played a number of the games. And I saw this movie at home, rented it from Blockbuster. I think we went and it was like, wait, there's a Mario Brothers movie? I've got to see that. I was maybe I want to say 8 or 9 years old, and I was like, well, that's something I absolutely have to see. And similar to Matthew, I a little confused, but shockingly just fine with the film, which is amazing looking back on it now, how okay I was with what that film was, considering how much of an odd duck it is. And I know we're getting dangerously close to spoiler territory, which I absolutely do not want to spoil a thing about this masterpiece, Trevor. You have done well knowing very little about Mario lore and almost nothing about this film.
I'm a fresh Mario canvas.
Yes.
And I can't wait for Bob Hoskins to paint
Yes.
upon me. Is he in this
Bob
movie?
Hoskins
Sure
is in this
is.
film
Fantastic.
as Mr. Mario. And John Leguizamo is his brother Luigi.
He's not.
He is.
He sure is.
He
Oh, gosh.
sure is.
A
And,
mustachio-less John Leguizamo. No mustache to be seen.
I
Yes.
very recently introduced my wife to Hook, which is a Bob Hoskins classic.
A little different in this movie.
And
his
she
performance.
introduced me to Do the Right Thing? The Spike Lee film with John Leguizamo.
yeah,
So
very,
I can't
very,
wait for this to be right
just
in line.
like Do the Right Thing. Yes, Spike Lee, I think, famously said that Do the Right Thing was inspired by the Super Mario Brothers film, even though it came out
out early, yeah.
Do the Right Thing came out before Super Mario.
Matt
Brothers,
doesn't
so.
have time to explain the Mario Bros canon today, but just trust us, it makes
But
sense.
it's very much a Spike Lee joint.
Yeah, they are in the same cinematic universe.
So, Trevor, what we typically do on Missing Frames in this first part with the poor soul who has not seen the film that we will be watching, I ask you to the best of your ability, try to predict what the plot of this film is. So please, without hesitation, just go with your gut and tell us, what do you think the Super Mario Brothers 1993 film is about?
From what I can recall, the poster is them like holding plumbing tools. So I think there's going to be like they lean into the Mario is a plumber aspect. I think I can't tell what in my brain is like a 30-second clip of the Mario Bros. That movie that I've seen, and what is a clip from the like Puppet Dinos sitcom. So dinosaurs, yes.
Yeah.
So I think, is there a puppet Bowser? I feel like I'm emotionally preparing for like Mario like in kind of magical New York, being a plumber. Maybe Bowser has like a rival plumbing service, or like some business that like screws up your plumbing, like he's causing hair loss that goes in the drain, or like poopies that are too big, or toilet paper that's too robust, and like they have to defeat them in a sort of like, I don't know, make enough money for summer camp kind of small scale plot.
It's amazing that this is what you've come up with, considering that your understanding of the video game world is relatively limited, but somehow you seem to know more and appreciate the gaming lore more than the people who made this film, and that is all I will say in terms of that. So Mario is a plumber, Bowser's a rival plumber, and
puppet.
And
that
puppet.
would be my pitch.
Is there a love interest? Is there a love triangle maybe between Mario and Bowser and
I think
Princess?
we do the classic like rom-com sort of like Princess Peach starts out with Bowser, but he's kind of like a jerk, and that's like the breakup inciting incident of the rom-com subplot.
Now, is this a human woman or a puppet woman dating
I
Puppet
can't
Bowser?
decide. Oh my gosh. Part of me would say like we do a Muppet movie style, and only Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are the only humans.
Right. So it's a little bit like Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where Bob Hoskins was the only or one of the main live action components.
Exactly. Yeah, or like a
nothing.
Like a Muppets Christmas Carol situation.
He is an expert. Yeah.
Yes, he understands. Maybe that's why he took on the role. He knew he was going to have to step up and bring those Roger Rabbit chops to the table. So, any idea about how the film ends? The climactic showdown, or what are you thinking?
Oh goodness. We either go like there's some kind of Bowser's castle on Long Island or something that we have to raid via ferry, maybe, after he takes his revenge and re-kidnaps his ex, the puppet Princess Peach. Or maybe we go to like some kind of public showdown, like a plumbing competition, or maybe like a hot dog eating contest, something where we can
Mario
have
loves hot dogs.
Something like he's something where the people of New York can just
they can see what a hero he is.
Exactly.
Exactly. And they all
Real
throw
Karate
cans.
Kid moment.
They all throw cans at Bowser, and they're like, "You mess with Mario, you mess with New York."
Yes. And then like at the very end, maybe like post the big credits, we get like a little teaser where like a new rival steps into town, and there's like there's a purple and yellow plumbing truck that like pulls up onto the block.
Oh, I like this. I like
fun
this
sequel
idea.
hug.
And Danny DeVito gets out of it.
Oh my God. Wow. I don't want to say you're going to be crushed, but don't cling too closely to that dream plot of yours.
I hold it very loosely.
You may find yourself in the same position many 1993 moviegoers found themselves in, leaving this theater.
I want to ask you guys before we go into our part 2 of this, how many of us have seen the 2023 Super Mario Brothers?
I have not seen it as of today, whatever day it is right now, May 12th, Friday, May 12th. I have not seen it.
Same here.
Okay. Now I have seen it.
Oh.
And I will carry that knowledge with me, but I'm going to be doing an extra treat for us in this part 2. So I'm going to be serving as our historian for this, because I'm not going to just watch the Super Mario Brothers from 1993. I'm also going to watch specifically the director's cut, which was recently resurfaced. This is a fan edit where they found a bunch of old footage that didn't make it into the final cut of the movie, and they have re-edited it into the movie. It's not the best quality because the footage that they found is not super high resolution, but
I didn't know this existed.
That version of the movie, so I'm going to have all sorts of deleted scenes and extra.
God. Are we hashtagging release the Morton Jankel
release
cut?
the Morton cut? I've seen bits and pieces of that cut, and I think it's interesting. So I will definitely watch the whole thing to bring that. And you know what? Just because I've watched the 2023 one, I'll go ahead and watch the 1989 Japanese only Mario animated movie. Just complete the Triforce, if you will. That's a Mario thing. Complete the Triforce of
collect all the rings and
Yeah.
use them to fight bad guys.
So we can compare and contrast and have kind of a greater conversation about making Mario a movie and whether it's a good idea or a bad idea.
Sure, this is going to be a masterful episode of Missing Frames.
Yeah, best
I
one.
am beyond excited. I'm elated and delighted. So let's go ahead and break to watch this masterpiece, and we'll be back to hear all about literally every single big screen venture, and not even big screen venture Mario's gone on. Some of the ones that didn't quite make it there. So stay tuned, everybody.
Now available to own on video cassette.
All right, we're back. Trevor, give it to us just straight. Give it to us
Is it
straight.
all on me?
It's all on you. Just tell us for the next hour. I want you to talk, and for Matt and I to listen.
We will judge you a
First of
little
all-
bit.
Yeah, we'll be judging you, but the audience won't know. They can't see us. You can see us though.
Okay, they'll just hear you judging me in my tone of voice.
They might hear some or things like that, but doesn't mean anything.
We'll get a few good ones for tape, and then you can just copy paste.
Right. This is the practice run, of course. So don't
Okay.
worry. We are actually recording this. We're not recording anything. So go ahead.
I need to print a retraction from my earlier statement, which is John Leguizamo and John Turturro are not the same person.
No, they're not. That just came
must
out.
not.
I know that's new information for us all, but they are
I
not.
confused them, and I thought I was getting John Turturro as Luigi.
Oh, that's what a crushing. No, I mean, no offense to Mr. Leguizamo, but
Oh, no,
what a disappointment. I feel like John Turturro as Luigi would have been quite the show.
I think he's
feel like
got
he-
more Waluigi energy personally. I think he would crush that role.
I think he would too. He could do
Thinking
anything.
the exact same thing. Okay, so are we doing a play-by-play, or do you want like a
Well, let's
everything-
do. Typically, when we come back, we'll start with your general overarching reaction, and then we'll transition into the play-by-play. So overall,
Did I cut
Trevor.
out a little bit.
No, you're good. You're good. You're still
Okay.
with me.
My overarching reaction is this feels like someone described Mario. Someone was just like, okay, explain Mario to me while I drop this acid. And then that person then explained what they thought they heard to their great-grandfather, who was then put in charge of creating a live-action Mario film. That's what I got from this. I also constantly had the feeling that like there was something in the 1993 zeitgeist that I was forgetting about that would like make this make sense. Like, was there a lot of like people talking about evolution in 1993?
Pokemon was not
near
out. Pokemon,
Okay.
I'm pretty sure, invented evolution. So
No, we're 3 years away. But I do want to comment on that for a second, because I think there's something interesting going on here where the Double Dragon movie was in production at the same time as the Super Mario Brothers movie, which became the second live-action video game movie, and it has a very similar aesthetic to this movie. It has like the same kind of like post-apocalyptic, like grungy, mutant, gross thing going on. So I think there was just something in like our brains in this time period that was like, this is how we make fantasy adventure films for children ?
there was a trend of like Jim Henson, like not the Muppets, but like the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth, even like Neverending Story, which I know was about a decade before this, but there was this kind of dark, twisted children's movie trend that sort of started happening in this period, the 80s and early 90s, early to mid 90s, where there were just like really messed up kids movies being released that were incredibly dark and horrifying.
But like post-apocalyptic too, this felt like Jim Henson does Brazil.
I think it's interesting to note also, I watched a really fantastic documentary that the YouTuber, the gaming historian, did on the making of this film. It's a very good, just like deep dive into the insanity behind the scenes. But this movie was pitched to Nintendo, like studios were fighting over the rights to Super Mario Brothers, and this movie was pitched to Nintendo with the premise of, we're gonna go dark. We're going to go dark. It's going to be a dark, weird origin story. And that was the pitch that Nintendo was like, we're interested in
Sounds
this.
good. Yeah.
Yeah. And they were also the only studio that offered them any sort of creative control. So that was also...
Which is so weird because apparently Nintendo, basically as soon as they sold the rights, were like, we don't really care what you do. Just, have fun. Like,
yeah,
they really did not care.
They had a really bizarre... So they were really involved in casting, which is bizarre because at one point Tom Hanks was signed on to play Mario, and this is true. Nintendo of Japan made them fire Tom Hanks because they said he can't do drama.
Well, this is, Philadelphia and Forrest Gump had not come out yet.
Yeah,
so
those movies hadn't come out yet.
Mostly famous for Big and
okay.
What else? Like, I guess
Like The Burbs.
Yeah, The Burbs. So
Big had some like dramatic moments.
Yeah, he
didn't
pulled his weight, and didn't he get nominated for an Oscar for Big?
He did.
Yeah.
And apparently the original writer that was brought on for this, he wanted the movie. So it was the guy who wrote Rain Man was the original writer brought on. And he wrote a treatment for the Super Mario Brothers movie that was rejected because apparently it was just Rain Man again.
with
Mario Brothers. And he was like in talks with Dustin Hoffman to come in and play Mario.
I did read that Dustin Hoffman was involved, but I didn't realize the Rain Man connection, which is just fantastic. But Trevor, I think that's a pretty apt description. I thought you were going to say somebody was explaining what Mario was, like based on like a third-party description they'd overheard maybe at a cafe, but they were explaining it live on the set as they were shooting the film. And they were like, wow, so Bob-ombs, tell me about those. Okay, yeah, and Big Bertha, yeah, sure, okay, this hey, come over here, you could be Big Bertha, sure, let's do this. There are weirdly faithful references, like direct references to the video game, but also the movie has almost zero to do with the video game in terms of its overall aesthetic, and practically everything about it is more Blade Runner, I think, than
Mario.
than Mario.
I mean,
and they had the production designer from Blade Runner too, which explains it.
I should have done more research on who was involved in this movie.
When you boot up Super Mario World, which was the most recent release at the time that this was like in production and was released, the first thing that happens is a big text box comes up that says, "Welcome to Dinosaur Land." And I feel like that explains a lot of the weirdness of this movie, that like somebody behind the scenes booted up Super Mario World, saw Welcome to Dinosaur Land, and was like, I think I know what I'm gonna do.
They turned the game off immediately.
They said,
right,
Dinosaur Land, say no more. I understand.
So Trevor, I had to typically with Missing Frames, I do my best to avoid finding out what someone's reaction to the film is before we record. I always love to get it live. And there was a moment in our group chat where I had to, like, you were ready to go. You were coming out swinging from the get-go because this film opens with an inexplicable animated dinosaur sequence. So
It looks like something from a CD-ROM game that I would have played in elementary school, and it like full narrator, like straight into the exposition, and like 16-bit pixelated dinosaurs.
Narrated by Homer Simpson himself, Dan Castellaneta.
That was Dan Castellaneta, really?
Wow.
Oh man, definitely
and
top-notch voice work from him.
Immediately, right off the bat, we're in differences with the version that I watched, the cobbled together director's cut, because the narration is not present in the original like cut of the opening. It's
so you're just cartoon and then dinosaurs saying this is the best.
No, the cartoon isn't there either. It's literally like, so they play the Mario theme song. They're like doot 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 over the like studio logos, and then it kind of like fades into these like black and white stills of like dinosaurs over like Bob Hoskins, and they do the like big like Brooklyn 10 million years ago, and then they go Brooklyn now, and so they basically just like save that for later. But I'm willing to bet that a studio note was like, I don't know what the is going on in this movie. You need to like right out the gate explain what the is going on.
Did that feel like you mentioned it was a lot of information, Trevor? Did it feel like a little bit of an exposition dump?
It did, and it felt like it was not trying to like. Normally when there's an exposition dump at the beginning of something like this, it's like, hey, people who haven't experienced this IP before and are like sitting in the theater next to their friend who loves it or whatever, here's all the stuff you need to know because you didn't play the game. But like, I know what Mario is, and this exposition was not catching me up on anything to do with Mario.
It made you more confused, is what you're saying.
I think the studio note was wrong. I think they should have dropped us into just like getting to know the Mario Bros as plumbers.
It's a better
like,
opening.
Tell me about the meteor later. Like,
so you didn't like the rainy night where what's her name, Samantha Mathis plays
Daisy.
her own mother. Plays Daisy's mother running to a church or an orphanage or whatever it is and delivering an egg to the nuns on the doorstep.
That
you
was
cut
her?
that scene. Yeah, she plays herself, or she plays her mom.
I mean, it makes sense. Look, your mom is gonna look like you.
It's true.
I really did like that scene. I don't think I needed it, but I liked how much they were like, Jesus is looking down on the birth of this thing from an egg.
I
was
love
trying to pick up the parallel there.
The shot of Dennis Hopper coming out of the shadows and like menacingly in his like military garb.
Yeah, that he never wears again.
Yeah, it's really just at the beginning there. I guess the implication is that he's like doing a military coup at that point
in history. He would have been overthrowing
the king, and so he wasn't like and fascinating amount of attention to detail there.
I was going to say they put a lot of thought into that. I really appreciate that. So all right, so we're losing those two opening scenes, and I've got to say it's a very the cartoon is kind of inexplicable, but it's extremely disturbing to open your film with this you're thinking Super Mario Brothers, you're bringing out the family to the movie theater to experience a fun zany adventure movie, and it's just a dark, rainy, sad baby hatching from an egg while Jesus is looking down on you from stained glass, and then the mother gets murdered apparently by
off-screen,
King Koopa, by the soon-to-be King Koopa. So very confusing and then very unsettling. And yeah, in that vibe of the weird children's films of this era where they were just like, let's ensure that every child that watches this will be scarred forever.
I mean, you got like removing, and I'm going to be saying this a lot as we go through this, but removing the kind of like context of like the Super Mario Brothers video game, I think that like it's certainly like an interesting way to open your movie with an egg being dropped on a doorstep and then the egg hatches into a human baby.
Yeah, you could start that. Like, don't talk about the dinosaurs at all, because then at least it's some mystery. It's like, why is this baby hatching from an egg? You're generating something, but then the opening narration is basically like, there are dinosaurs in this world. They're not in this world, in the world over. And by the way, what if they were actually people?
And what if they wanted to come back?
I was like, come back where? To Earth? Like, what is this talking about? Why did the dinosaurs decide that they all wanted to be people? I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. But all right, so we're getting into the opening with the Mario Brothers, and here's what I want to say from the get-go. One thing I hope we can all agree on is that at the very least in this film, Trevor, tell me if I'm off base by saying we all agree on this.
I'll keep you honest.
Yeah, keep me honest. I think Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo are pretty great in the movie, all things considered. Considering
1,000%.
Considering that behind the scenes and afterwards, Bob Hoskins would describe this as the single most miserable film experience he's ever had, he doesn't come across as somebody who's just in it for the paycheck.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they genuinely have so much chemistry, the two of them. Like, I'm glad that they're together for most of the movie because they really do play off of each other well, and they have like a really like nice brotherly dynamic about them. Like the scene where Daisy is like on the phone and he's like, you know, encouraging Luigi to like talk to her. It's just like good. It's just like they're
cute,
really good in that scene together.
So you enjoyed that, Trevor. You wanted the movie to open with this.
I agree. I think, yes, I would have started it with like, let's get to know these plumber bros. I think like if Mario Bros origin story as a dark fantasy in the 90s is a given, like if we have to have that, then yeah, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, great choice.
they're the human anchor that pulls us through this movie. And fun tidbit, they knew from the get-go that this was going to be a not great experience. The directors were apparently just complete assholes, very controlling, like very up their own asses about like, we are artists, we are making a brilliant movie, and you're either with us or you're not. And this production, the script had already gone through numerous iterations, and most of the cast had signed on under the assumption that the script was something that was completely embracing kind of the dark, twisted, kind of more adult version that is at least partly in this movie. And then there was like a studio rewrite because they freaked out and were like, wait a second, has anyone actually seen this game and the demographic that it's aimed towards? They freaked out and did a rewrite that kind of just screwed the whole tone up, but the directors plowed forward as if they were still making their like Blade Runner knockoff, and it made the experience miserable for everybody. So yeah. Hoskins and Leguizamo were apparently drunk throughout the entire production. They would drink together, yes, between takes, and they would drink after each shoot day. And
it's also important to know that they were shooting in a abandoned cement factory in the middle of like an extremely hot like North Carolina summer.
Yeah, Wilmington, North Carolina, which is a wonderful, wonderful city. It's where they shot Blue Velvet, so Dennis Hopper was right at home.
Coming hot off Blue Velvet.
Yes, he just experienced a career resurgence. He told a story later on about his son asking him why he was in this movie, and he said, "Well, son, I mean, you needed some new shoes," and his son apparently replied, "Dad, I didn't need the shoes that badly," which I think sums it up pretty well. But,
classic classic Dennis Hopper's son.
His name might be John for all we know. John Hopper.
John Hopper.
Love dearly. But the movie kind of then transitions from the darkness to this Mario Brothers zany dynamic between these two brothers. Luigi is talking about like, oh, look, did you know there are parallel dimensions? I just heard this on television. And Mario's like, okay, Luigi, let's get to business. And here's what confused me. So they get a call about like some big amazing plumbing job, and they're like, we gotta get there right now. And Luigi is driving all over the place while Matt's favorite Alan Silvestri score plays throughout the film. And they get there, and this confused me, and I hope someone can explain this to me.
Oh, I can.
They get there, but then the
Scapelli brothers.
The Scapelli brothers, like, oh, they got there first. And I was like, wait a second. When people have a plumbing issue, do they typically call multiple plumbers? Yeah, so, they say whoever gets here first gets the money.
This is a much longer scene in the version that this is like probably some of the most footage that was cut. And was restored in the version that I watched. So it's like a much longer sequence of them. They go to the restaurant and they see that the Scapelli brothers are already there. Like all the dialogue of like, they beat us here is like all ADR'd for the theatrical cut. And they like see that the Scapelli brothers are there, and there's this whole confrontation with them in the restaurant where it like establishes that the Scapellis have like mafia connections, and they're basically like sabotaging restaurants intentionally so that they can swoop in and be like, oh, looks like a big problem here, it's gonna take a couple of days. And Mario's like, no, it's not, I can fix that in 2 hours. And like, you know, it's all just like establishing that like Mario is this like earnest, you know, savant plumber who is, you know, down on his luck and is always being like, you know, outdone by this shady organization who will have more plot relevance as the story goes on. So it's a little more clear, and it just sort of takes its time a little bit more to like just spend more time with the brothers and establish their dynamic, which is always nice.
So Trevor, you were partially right about there being a rival plumbing company.
Did I say that? I thought I did. Yeah. And that's, see, I feel like I have my sort of Karate Kid moment of like, we got the rival for the niche thing that we do. And I would have just, you know, seeing that, taken it from there, like, let's just make this a movie about plumbing. But
yeah, get rid of them.
It kind of is. It kind of still is. It comes up a lot.
There's a surprising amount. There's a surprising amount of plumbing, all things considered. They did at least get that aspect of the characters. They're plumbers. We've got to have a couple scenes of them plumbing stuff.
I do appreciate that, like, their specific skill set comes in handy so much in this like other universe situation. Like, I like the idea of like person with X occupation sent to magical other world, and their specific skill set is able to help them in other magical world. Like, that's fun. That's a fun idea.
For sure. And apparently in the dinosaur world, where there aren't really many dinosaurs. Yes, Dino Hatton. No. There aren't many dinosaurs, just a lot of people with hairstyles and outfits, I guess, that are supposed to make them look like dinosaur people. But they're very well aware of what plumbers are. And maybe they need plumbers too. So it just felt very much like this is a unique skill set that they bring to this world, but also immediately they're like, there are plumbers here. We got to find them and arrest them. And it's like, oh, so
they know what plumbers are, yeah.
Yeah, you know what plumbers are.
Yeah, I mean, they would have to have plumbing. I mean, they have, like, they have pipes that somebody must be servicing them. But yeah, I mean, you know, it's the whole thing with, like, the parallel evolution where, like, dinosaurs also evolved into human-like creatures doesn't make a ton of sense. But for whatever reason, even as a kid, I was kind of like, yeah, I buy it. Sure.
Yeah, sure. I mean,
I caught up to it. I did. But the thing that really helped me is that I realized that like all current day human hairstyles are also based on monkey hairstyles.
Yes, that's true.
So I think it makes sense.
For sure.
I mean, it works.
So we learn that there's this rival plumbing company, and in the midst of this, there is a sweet young lass who is an archaeologist, is working for a museum. I didn't quite follow.
She's a grad student.
So she's a grad student, and she's somehow involved with archaeology and this dig site. And
Scapelli's is constructing something. They found dinosaur bones. They called the university, and then like she showed up. And
yeah,
she showed up
again,
to be like, I got to put a stop to this.
All of this is clarified in the footage that was cut from the movie.
Did they have the scene? Did they have the scene of her like picking up the phone and being like, "What? The Scapelli brothers are there?" And like, I gotta go.
Well, there's like a whole extended confrontation with the head of the Scapelli family, where he explains that like they're trying to build on this property, and she's like, "You can't. We found dinosaur bones here. Like, we have to properly excavate this and like, you know, make sure that none of this stuff gets damaged." And he then sends his goons to sabotage the site, and that sabotage is what opens up the barrier between worlds.
Oh, gotcha.
Oh,
so we're getting a little bit. I can definitely see though, like a studio being like, we got to get rid of all. Get them to get them to Dino Hatton as soon as possible. Get them jumping around and doing stupid stuff. Like I'm gonna have to side with the studio. Like, this stuff sounds interesting, maybe, but like with this just complete like dumpster fire of a movie, I can just see them look, we cannot be talking about plumbing and mafia. We've got to get them to the dinosaur land as quickly as possible. But Trevor, how do you feel about this lovely lady Daisy as a character, as a love interest?
I thought their chemistry was like good. It was fun to watch. Like Matt was talking about that scene where they first meet and like use the telephone was pretty cute. Maybe there's a little more like that happens between her and Luigi in the extended cut, because I feel like they went very quickly from like a ride in your car to first date to let me take you alone to my underground dig site. But I get it. We gotta move quick.
There is more of them in the
Thank
extended
God.
cut. But I do want to say that there's a joke in that scene that was cut in the theatrical cut. I'm pretty sure it's cut in the theatrical cut, but I think it's like genuinely funny of that scene where Luigi goes to pick up the phone because he's like checking the messages for the Mario Brothers, and as Daisy walks up and he sees her for the first time and he's distracted, you can hear the message that's playing is Mario Brothers. My entire building is flooded and this is gonna make you so much money. And
It is in that.
funny.
It is in the
Funny.
theatrical.
I thought that was a good bit. Yeah. I was like leaning in at that point, like, don't hang up the phone. No. All right. Yeah. No. This movie's not about the biggest plumbing call of Manhattan for the Mario Bros. I get it. In a sense, it is.
Yeah,
well, what could be bigger than an apartment building that flooded? A secret portal at a dinosaur bone excavation site.
They made the right career move for sure. But I think I agree with you. I think Leguizamo really sells it. I think his earnestness in his performance sells the relationship. I think Samantha Mathis is just like, I don't know what her acting chops were up to this point, what she'd done, what credits she had, because she seems utterly like lost. Like she seems very confused throughout the movie. Am I the only one who thinks that?
I mean, I feel like she does what a part like that kind of calls for, I guess. I don't know, like I don't think that it's like a super deep role or whatever of that but I feel like she's fine.
To be fair, nobody has a super deep role in this movie.
But I mean, like, given like the sort of like archetypical character that she's playing, I mean, I feel like she at the very least elevates it above just being like a MacGuffin to be chased around in the film.
Sure.
Like I feel like she has enough of like her own personality, and I like that she has like stuff to do when she's like being held captive and whatever. So like there's something there. I don't want to give her, I don't want to shit on Samantha Mathis too much, because if their movie has problems, they're not her fault.
It's true. Trevor, you were saying something.
I thought it worked. No, I thought it was great. She's like a archaeologist turned secret monarch that hatched from an egg, and she made it work.
So after this sequence of like, there's some meet cute, there's a little bit of Mario Brothers fun, then we do the date night, which was very, very all of a sudden like we're going on a double date. It's happening tonight. I guess Mario and Danielle, was it Daniela?
Daniela. I will not write down that character's name.
Daniela. We are introduced to her, and then there's the first great, I guess, do we call it an action sequence with the flooding in the sewer? Where I'd say the first great moment where we see just how good these guys are at plumbing. I mean, they're good, and it's fun. I like the give me this wrench, give me that wrench, hand, and it's very very fun, and I like it. It's light on its feet. They're just great. They're having a ball, and they have really good chemistry.
I like he and Samantha Mathis are down there, and he's like, I'm just an apprentice, and then he's like, I know what to do, and then like hard cut to like they've gone to Mario, and he's like Scapelli, and I'm like, that's fun. It's like paced fun. It's a fun sequence.
It goes really well. But Trevor, how did you feel about the transition suddenly to the weird sand wall portal?
There was a mist.
There was a mist. Where are the pipes? Shouldn't they get to Mario World through an actual pipe?
They do go through a big pipe later in the movie. At
some point they do. Yes,
have they said like the gluck 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 thing yet at this point in the film?
No, this has not happened yet. I don't think.
Okay.
The first time they do that, I think, is when they escape in the police car.
Yeah, that's the first time they do it. They escape in the
it's
police car.
Weird. It's weird how that happens about 30 or so minutes into the movie, and they do the glug 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 as if that's something they've been doing since the beginning of the movie. Like
if they
I
just
remember
done it one time at the beginning, yeah.
It's they all they needed was one time. Like they even could have done it when they fixed the plumbing. They could have done it, but
I think they should have had the sound of like that satisfying like drain that you get when you unclog a toilet, where it goes like glop, glop, and then they go like gluck 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 gluck.
Yes, that would have been perfect.
And I have to say, for listeners, I know these two from way back, and I really wish that we had watched the movie together when we all lived in the same place, because we would have constantly been going gluck 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 to each other.
We would have.
Here's my theory. I don't think I've seen that. I was telling this to Matt before we started recording, but I'm pretty sure that was something that this is not confirmed. I haven't seen this confirmed anywhere. So this is my theory. Hoskins and Leguizamo, because they were drinking all the time, because they were drunk practically 24/7 while they were shooting this movie, they just did that on the fly. Like they improv'd it as like an inside joke, like glug 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 glug, like we're drinking glug glug glug. And the directors just completely, like, it goes over their heads. And they're like, yeah, you should do that in the movie. Like, we'll put that in the movie. Do that. And so they were like, okay, sure, we'll do that. And for them, it's like a little inside moment that they're like, glug, 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 we're drinking, we're drunk.
The first time they did it, let me bring this back around. The first time they did it, I thought they were trying to make the noise that it makes in Mario when you go into a pipe. And I thought that would have been the perfect time. Like, you have a pipe, that's how you get to Dino Hatton. And we get like that noise, or like, I don't know, some big epic version of that noise as they go. But no, they fell through a rock wall, sand wall.
Yes.
Sand wall.
I really like the effect of her coming through it. I thought that was pretty creepy and weird in a fun way. Mario's portal as he falls
he somehow flips upside down before he goes into the wall, and then he's got his like arms up, he's like T-posing as he flips through. You know what it looks like? It looks like in Mortal Kombat Annihilation when they're in the big metal balls that they ride through the planet.
Maybe that scene is a direct reference to the Super Mario Brothers film.
I mean, they were artists. It's an homage.
It is, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Everyone who made Mortal Kombat Annihilation is a saint. So how did you feel about the design of Dino World, Trevor? Did this align with what you were expecting from a Mario Brothers film?
No, I thought, here we go, like Mushroom Kingdom or something. But no, it was the first thing I thought of was Brazil. Yes, there's like a plumber or like an HVAC guy in that movie too, who's like
and Bob Hoskins also
Bob
as a plumber in that movie. He's like the guy that comes in.
That's what I thought of right away. I kind of, once I recalibrated to that, I was able to get comfortable. But I feel like again and again, this movie's storytelling is like, they think it's like Dune or something, where they can just have you experience the thing and then like kind of explain it later, from like the fungus to the portal to the like everything. I'm just like, what? And then they do kind of explain it later on. I feel like I didn't have more questions when I got to the end of it, despite the fact that we were thrown into like Blade Runner Mario world suddenly.
Yeah, I think that's a really good comparison, actually, is this idea of like, oh, this world is so expansive, we'll just throw the audience in. But the movie, the theatrical cut, and maybe some of this exists in the version you watched, Matt, but there's just a lot of jarring edits where I could tell the scene was supposed to go on longer, and it was just like, no, we got to keep moving, cut that out. Like, scenes feel like they prematurely end, and all of it, like, it just felt like they get to this world, they're very nonchalant about the fact that they're in a completely different world with weird stuff going on. Mario and Luigi are just kind of like, well, we got to find her, we got to find Daisy. And then there's kind of like, oh, wait a second, this is kind of weird, where the hell are we? Like, I thought that was interesting, but then all of a sudden they're like, they run into Toad, who is just a guy playing guitar. He's
on just the busking.
And then suddenly they're arrested, and they're thrown into prison. I don't know why. I don't understand why they had to end up in a jail cell and then get out. Was it so that we could get the extremely comical sequence of them thinking they're about to get shot.
Well, okay, so it has been a minute since I've seen the it's been a couple of years since I watched the theatrical cut, but in the cut that I watched, there's a scene after they get there, but before they get arrested, when they meet Toad, that where Dennis Hopper is talking to Iggy and Spike, his henchmen, and they're like, "We got you the girl. Here's the girl." And he's like, "Okay, good. Where's the rock?" And they're like, "The rock? The plumbers have it." And he's like, "Plumbers?" And then he's like, "Plumber alert." And he puts out like
that is in the theatrical cut.
Yeah,
That's right.
A bounty, and when the police arrest Toad for being a revolutionary, for speaking against King Koopa, which they say to Mario, he's like, "You can't arrest a guy for singing." And they're like, "We can for singing against Koopa." And then they see his belt that he has plumber's tools, and they're like, "Plumbers!" And then they arrest him.
Yes, that was that was in this cut too. Yeah,
that's a failing on my part. For some reason I wasn't paying
your media literacy.
I wasn't paying very close attention to this, but it does feel like they get there. They're not concerned at all about falling into another portal or a portal into another dimension. They go to this really scary place, and they're just kind of casually like, "Oh well, Daisy, she could be around. This is kind of weird." And then they meet this guy.
Though.
Yeah, they just kind of are like, "What's happening?" And then
they have that one line where like, "Is this the Queens or like whatever?"
Oh, that's right.
It's like modern. Yeah. I thought they played it off well enough to like just keep moving.
Yeah, and there's it's
barely
that exchange is slightly longer in the version that I watched, where Bob Hoskins tries to like rationalize it, where he's like, "Well, we went under the bridge, so but this doesn't look like Manhattan." And then John Leguizamo says, "Well, I haven't been to Manhattan in a couple of weeks," and he goes, "Must have been a busy couple of weeks."
This is all.
Yeah.
What, the extended version sounds like maybe it's just the theatrical version.
Okay,
maybe you just watched.
That's in there too.
Maybe
but, I mean, that exchange is what I'm saying. It's like that exchange I think helps, like Trevor's saying, just like keep the pace along and kind of like keep us in this like goofy kind of tone of like these guys are out of place, but they're not like they're just
so it's
like,
the argument here is it's intentional. Keep things moving. Don't ask questions. Let's keep going. I'll buy that. I'll buy that because the energy is certainly up like during this whole thing. And again, Hoskins and Leguizamo they're carrying it through, and watching the sequence of them going through like the whole processing, and they're getting dumped, like all this stuff is getting dumped on them.
They, like,
and I can just they spray down their pants, and then they dump blue goo on them, and I can just imagine how miserable it must have been to shoot this stuff. And yet they're on point. I swear John Leguizamo is breaking character at points because he's just laughing and like having a great time for some reason. But I have to give them credit because as miserable as they apparently were, they are completely into the moment and in the scene. And
I mean,
it helps you buy into it.
The entire police station, the whole sequence of them in the police station, I feel like is one of the strongest parts of the movie. I think from an aesthetic design perspective, which is something I really don't think this movie gets enough credit for, because I think the production design in this movie is really interesting, and there's a lot of really interesting little details and just like inexplicable stuff. Like I love when they're brought up to the giant police desk and there's the cop talking to them, and there's like a woman's heel inexplicably rubbing his shoulder as they have the exchange, which is so weird but like so perfect. You're just kind of like, yeah, it would be like that in this place.
Well, also the exchange they have when we reveal that good. Mario and Luigi's last names are Mario. They are, in fact, the Mario brothers.
That was the first thought I had when we first met the Mario brothers. I was like, it's never been more apparent to me that these two brothers are named after the first name of one of them. And then, sure enough, just like I said, it's like, dude, I got my explanation, which is their last name is also Mario.
Yeah,
but
Mario,
it doesn't
Mario,
explain.
Luigi, Mario.
It doesn't explain why they spend the whole most of this movie before they get different outfits with Luigi wearing red and Mario wearing green.
It is odd that, and then when they get there, when they go to the Boom Boom Club, they have the like fancy suits on that Iggy and Spike give them, and
that
they're
seemed
wearing
like
red
a missed
and yellow.
opportunity. Yeah. Again, there's a weird resistance to like embracing the video game.
I mean, I guess they just
aesthetic.
wanted to save that like uniform reveal for when they put on the like maintenance uniforms at Cooper Tower.
Final
which
climactic moment. Yeah.
I mean, it's fun. But another thing, I mean, I love the sequence of that. They go through the decontamination to for the fungus, and then they get to they're brought in front of the thing and chained up, and then like the big guns come out that turn out to be cameras. Like that's great. That's a great sequence.
It is fun. For sure.
One thing that I want to comment on that I know is definitely exclusive to the extended cut is that there's a lot more footage in Dino Hatton of just like scary looking dinosaur people that was like there's just like little cuts to like when they're in the prison cell, there's like a part where like in the cell next to them, in like the cage next to them in the fucking kennel, there's like a scary dinosaur monster guy with all these prosthetics, and he's smoking a cigarette, and then he like flicks it at Mario, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" And it's like, and he's got like red eyes, and he's like, "Ah!" And it's like that was clearly like a studio person being like, "Cut that, too scary."
Too scary for kids. Like, come on. Them being in this horrifying world, in this horrifying prison is fine, but that was too far for sure.
I mean, it is scary. You know, and it's like a creepy scene that is lingered on more. And going into this kennel scene, I think that I don't have a ton of complaints with this movie. I gotta tell you, I really like this movie. There is one thing that I don't like in this movie, and that is how clunky the like repeated explanations are. And I think this is the worst example of it, is Toad being like, "Well, let me explain to you how our world works."
Right, exactly. That's one of the weirdest things in this movie at all is Toad in general, the character of Toad. Naming him Toad, I think, was obviously like, oh yeah, we gotta have Toad in the movie. But then the journey the character goes on is just extraordinarily strange. They de-evolve him, so he becomes a Goomba. And our big reveal of the Goomba, so by the way, Trevor, the Goombas in the video game are those little brown
This is another thing I was very confused by, because they look like mushrooms in the game.
Yes.
But they look like dinosaurs in the movie, but there is a fungus doing something else.
The king is the fungus, yeah.
Yeah, the king is the fungus, and there are mushrooms in the movie, but you're absolutely right. The Goombas are, I think, the opposite. I think they got their inspiration from David Byrne and Stop Making Sense.
I mean, I feel like the aesthetic to me that I always thought was like, is that the fact that like little tiny heads almost kind of look like what a Goomba looks like.
Right.
Like it's almost like you took a Goomba and stuck it on a giant, intimidating body. That's always what it felt like to me.
It's a weird... The movie is full of like weird, like, why did they do this, but also oddly compelling design choices.
I couldn't agree more.
Did you feel, Trevor, like, despite the fact that this movie is bonkers and insane and not remotely concerned really with following closely to the aesthetic of the famous video game, how did you feel about the production design?
I kept thinking like this would be fine if it had nothing to do with Mario. Like, if it was just a movie about, like, they could be plumbers or they could be electricians, whatever, and they fall into an alternate universe with like dinosaurs. It would have been totally fine. I would have watched it just like I watched, like, I don't know, Existenz or some other, like, really gross-looking movie from this
If
era.
only Cronenberg had directed this.
Oh, I don't want to watch the heck out of that. But.
And I think this gets to an interesting problem of, like, that I feel like I'm going to keep coming back to, of like, how do you adapt Super Mario Brothers? Because I don't know that anybody's really cracked that code, because it's a series that was intentionally designed to have as little story as possible. Like, the story has always come second, sometimes third in a Mario game. And I feel like adapting that for the big screen, especially in live action, is a big ask. And I don't necessarily think that this is the best way to do it, but I do think that this is one of the most interesting ways that they could have done it.
I completely agree with you. I think the movie's failures come from a lack of confidence in the initial vision
100%.
that was laid out. Like, should there have been a pitch for like an incredibly dark and twisted Mario Brothers movie? Probably not. Like, realistically, like if someone said we're going to adapt Mario Brothers, my thought would not be great. I want to see the dark version of that. But if that's the version that Nintendo signed off on, they said we're okay with it, then the studio signed off on, and the directors and the script and everybody has signed on to this. It's the movie's flaws and primary faults. There are lots of them, but I feel like at the core of it is this tension between like, who is this movie for? Which audience is this for? We have the production design of Blade Runner, but also like the kind of quirky sense of humor of a child's movie.
That was the big note you'll see echoed in reviews of the time, is just people being like, I don't know who this movie is for, because it doesn't feel like it's for kids. And having seen like a lot of the footage that was cut from the movie, like a lot of it is just like more adult stuff. Like there's a dinosaur stripper at the club scene that was cut from the movies. You can still see her for like a couple of seconds in some shots because it's just kind of hard to completely remove her. But there's like this whole thing where she's like got like a big lizard tail and just like scales and stuff, but she's like dancing erotically.
Well, apparently they hired real strippers to
apparently
play
so.
those roles. It's a very weird thing because I do give props, like watching the movie, and I was constantly like shaking my head and like, what is going on? But at the same time, I kept finding myself saying, you know, the production design is very solid, and the effects, even the bad ones, have a charm to them. And there is a distinctive vision on display here. I don't know that it's the right vision for a Mario Brothers movie, or what I would want a Mario Brothers movie to be, but at the same time, despite the failings, I feel like it's hard to completely dismiss this movie as like, oh, it's just a piece of crap, it's a bomb. I think Seth Rogen was like, oh, it's one of the worst movies ever made. And yeah, it's bad, but like, I'm not surprised this movie kind of has a cult following. Let's go ahead,
bad
Trevor.
in an interesting way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If I was going to try to make it better, I wouldn't say like make it less weird.
Yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
And, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with just they weren't like willing to go all the way when they already committed to an idea. They like, you know, got cold feet at the last second, and it really, really shows. But in talking about these just like weird moments, there's one moment that I wish had been kept in the movie because the effects of it are not finished in the one that I watched. But there's there's an extended sequence when we first see the de-evolution chamber, which is a sequence that always kind of confused me as a kid, but I think makes more sense with this added context, where he shows it off for the first time with Toad, and there's a kind of horrifying sequence of Toad de-evolving into a Goomba.
Another one of those nightmare-inducing moments, like the sand wall. You have these moments in these kids' movies that just terrify.
The original moment was even worse because the bit that was deleted from that is that after they de-evolve Toad, there's a scene where one of the workers that's working on the machine, he sneezes, and Koopa like turns to him and he's like, "Oh, are you sick? Are you not feeling well? Well, you better sit down then. Here, take a seat. And he has him sit down in the chair, and he's like, "Please, Koopa, I'm not sick. I'll feel better." And then he's like, No, you need rest. Let's get you rest. And he has him go into the machine, and he de-evolves him all the way back to like primeval like sludge, and he comes out of the machine like looking exactly the same, and then he melts into sludge, which spills all over the floor. And there's a remnant of that in the theatrical cut, because when Mario and Luigi go and push him into the chair, you can see the sludge all over the ground, and that's the reason he like slips. He like slips back into the chair.
I mean, maybe I'm revealing a little bit too much behind the scenes of Missing Frames. There were moments of this film where I was not 100% paying attention, but there was. I looked at it and it just looks like there's just crap all over the floor, and I'm like, oh, I must have missed something. Something must have happened.
Yeah, there's
but
that guy.
It's a glaring continuity error. They did not have the time to clean it up or reshoot it so that it was not a mess.
It also reasserts this character trait that I really enjoy about this Koopa, that he's a germaphobe.
Yes.
Even though he's a germaphobe living in a disgusting city slowly being overtaken by fungus, which is just very fun.
I loved, if we can like just pull out specific moments now. Like,
Yes, absolutely.
The scene where King Koopa and what is his like bride's name? I can't remember.
Oh,
Linda?
Lena is his like assistant. She's not like his. Yeah, she's like a second in command.
You'll forgive me for being confused about that because they're sharing a hot tub in one scene.
Yeah,
which is
a mud bath. A mud
bath. And he says, "You know what I love about mud? It's clean and dirty at the same time." And I was like, that's it. Best line of the film. And it, looking back, like as we watched through that, not to go to the same well over and over again, but it had like big Baron Harkonnen energy in that whole scene where his like two proteges come to him and he's like in goo.
And stomp through all the mud.
Well, even better if we want to talk about the 1984 Dune, where he is just floating through the air and laughing inexplicably.
I want to also point out the Dune connection in that it is shown at one point, and I actually really love this as just like a lore detail, that on this parallel Earth, Dino Hatton is the only city on the planet, and the rest of it is desert. So it is a desert planet.
That's incredible. I in terms of favorite lines, Koopa also has another one of my favorites, which is near the end of the film. I know we're kind of still in the middle, but when this whatever the hell the rival plumber's name is, Scapelli, when he gets devolved to a monkey and
monkey,
he just goes he just goes monkey. That's it. That was my favorite line in the whole movie. So Dennis Hopper has, I think, the best lines of the film.
I don't know if there is like a better example in like film history that I can think of like a finale being significantly cut down from what it was supposed to be. Because like when they were originally pitching it, it was going to be a big showdown with King Koopa on the Brooklyn Bridge, and that was going to be the big finale. But they just like couldn't do it. It was too expensive. They didn't have the budget. So they just now in this version, they just go to our world for a couple of minutes and then they come back.
It's like 1 minute. They take time off to go to New York for a minute, destroy the Twin Towers.
Yeah,
and then return to
there's
Dino
a
Hatton.
shot of the Twin Towers. It's like as if it wasn't bad enough that it's like, oh, in this alternate world it's destroyed. They're like, and look what happened. It's destroyed in the real world
and
too.
I think it's like, it's supposed to be like their Koopa Towers like fusing, but the imagery is pretty loaded.
That one specific moment did not age well.
I want to take a second to talk about this movie's soundtrack because
please.
I think that similar to the performance of John Leguizamo and Bob Hoskins being universally just great, I think the other thing we have to just all agree to is that George Clinton and the Goombas cover of Walk the Dinosaur is just a bop. It's an absolute bop. And so the cut that I watched, I think, changed around some of the music in the club scene. Because do they play I've Got the Power by Snap in the...
I don't think so.
So when the club sequence is extended in general, but when they first get there in the extended cut, they're playing "I've Got the Power" by Snap, and I was like, all right, they're pretty good. And then they play George Clinton and the Goombas, where there's a whole extra sequence where Mario and Luigi blend in with all of the dinosaur dancers, and they like dance along with them to avoid the Goombas. And I was like, this is great. Why'd they cut this?
That I would have loved in the movie. There was a moment where I thought that happened and I was waiting for them to start dancing and it didn't happen, and that feels like what a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly just sort of cut around it to have them just sort of like leave. But there's another cut scene in this that is the most urgent for me to talk about because it is very plot relevant to two particular character arcs, but it's also important to note that this is a scene where Iggy and Spike, the two henchmen, rap. There is a rap sequence that was cut from the movie.
What is this available on YouTube?
Oh, it's on YouTube. You can watch it on
my
YouTube.
God.
There's a sequence where they're all the four of them are at the club together. And Iggy and Spike are watching the Mario Brothers, and they start to have this sort of existential conundrum brought on by their increased brain capacity, where they basically become revolutionaries, and they decide they want to overthrow King Koopa for the rights of the proletariat. They literally say that.
They say that in the theatrical cut, too, for like one line.
In the form of a rap. They have this revelation where they're kind of like they're literally just like rapping at each other, and then as they keep rapping back and forth, they get up on stage and they get microphones and they lead the crowd in a big anti-Koopa rap. And then they get arrested and hauled off to King Koopa. So
that seems I mean, the kids would have loved that. That should have been in the movie.
I mean, it explains like their heel or their face turn at the end of the movie. Like it does feel kind of inexplicable that they're just like, no, we don't like you anymore, Koopa, in the original cut. It's nice to see that transformation done musically.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to watch this as soon as we're done here.
It's crucial. I believe the chorus is King Koopa the Poopa or something like that.
So in the theatrical version, they make Iggy and Spike smarter, and then there's, for me, in the cut down version, it was just like a throwaway bit where they were like we're here to defend the rights of the proletariat, and I was like, oh, I love that they just like one of the things that they did in addition to getting a larger vocabulary was they just like become socialists or something.
Yes,
it was just like a little throwaway gag, and I was like, that's fine.
I mean, it is. I mean, it's basically the same thing, but I do think it's just a very fun bit that happens.
Their inclusion in the film is enormously confusing unless they rap, and so I'm a little dismayed that was not in it.
I gotta say, I do like Iggy and Spike. I feel like
they're the bulk and skull of this movie.
They're fully committed. They're having a good time. Like they've got good timing with each other. I love the sequence of them in the desert where they get tied up and they're kind of like looking at each other back to back. Like it's fun. You know, they're fun. They're like so many other actors in this movie. They're inexplicably giving a great performance in the worst conditions imaginable.
Do you think, I want to ask you, Matt, do you think they'd written the script for this movie with just random character names and then literally just arbitrarily started naming them after video game characters? Like, oh, this is Big Bertha, this is Toad, this is that. What do you think?
No, I don't think so, because I know that one of the earlier versions of this script that was floating around for a while, it was like a buddy comedy where Mario and Luigi are traveling together and Toad is like the third guy in their group, and he's kind of like the wisecracking, like, hey, let me tell you about the Mushroom Kingdom kind of guy. And I feel like all of these scripts were building off of the previous one. Like, I feel like all of these writers were given the previous one and were like, don't do this, do something else. So I feel like they must have had a frame of reference, even though a lot of the references in this movie do feel kind of random, but I do appreciate how many there are. Like, I feel like the Easter eggs in this movie feel much more like oh, that's cute, than the Easter eggs in the actual quote unquote Super Mario Brothers movie that came out recently, where it just feels like 90 minutes of them like holding up different toys in the toy aisle at Toys R Us to be like, look, you know Cranky Kong? There he is. We have Cranky Kong. Who else do we have here?
It's an oddly... I mean, this film is oddly faithful to the source material, considering how blatantly unfaithful it is. And the stuff they reference and bring up is consistently like, how is this so specific to something in the video game, whereas the whole feel of this movie, the look and feel of it, is completely at odds with that design.
I think something that is unbelievably fascinating, and I don't want to derail us too much with the new Super Mario Brothers movie, but it's really important to point out that the new movie has almost the same plot as this movie. Like, they're they are plumber brothers in the real life Brooklyn who fall into another universe, and they have to save the princess who is from our universe or something, but like doesn't remember her like origins. I guess they don't have to save it. They have to save Luigi in the new one, but whatever. And like the big at the end of the movie, there's this big moment where Bowser goes to Brooklyn, and like all of the like other plumbers and stuff are like, what's going on here? And then when Mario and Luigi save the day, they're like, those are the Super Mario Brothers. And I was like,
God.
this is the same movie. Like, it's the same like basic setup. Yeah, I mean and so I feel like they weirdly kind of cracked the code here, that when
by
they were
accident.
by accident, like when they were writing the new movie, they were like, well, what should we do? And when I was watching the new Super Mario Brothers movie, I kept thinking to myself, I kept having these sort of like in my head like studio notes of like, well, it would be nice if like I was like, well, Mario doesn't feel like he's really contributing all that much to this story. Like it would be nice if like, I mean, he's a plumber, so like let him like do some plumbing stuff to like help the cause. And then I was like, I'm literally describing the other movie when I do that. Like all of my notes, I was just creating the other movie.
That's an odd place to be in, Matt, where you're watching the new Super Mario Brothers film and thinking, God, if only this was more like the 1993
I know, but
version.
like that was everything. I was like, well, why are Mario and Luigi separated the entire movie? It's the Super Mario Brothers. Have them together the whole time, like in the other movie. Like every thing that I could think of was just fixed in this movie. It's significantly, and I say this with not a drop of irony, it is a significantly better film.
My God.
My God.
Well, I don't want to spend too much time harping on beat for beat. I want to get to some of the highlights for Trevor, for all of us. So what are some things that we absolutely must discuss with this film? We've hit some really important points that need to be made as far as the production design, as far as everything regarding the direction of the film and just how insane this entire production was. What are we missing? What are the things that need to be brought to the table?
Yoshi looks great. Great puppet.
Yoshi does look great. As far as does he look like himself? Does he look like the video game? No, he doesn't.
Not
but
at
as
all.
an effect, like this was the
great.
same year. Yeah, the same year that Jurassic Park came out. Shockingly, because you
And
know,
the blend
Jurassic
of like
Park.
CG and puppetry, like it worked. It was
I was
smooth.
actually really impressed by. There's a wide shot where you see Yoshi in full movement.
Yeah.
and I was like, "Is this a puppet? Is this animation?" It looks really, really
It looks
good.
like they just digitally removed the puppeteer and like the
Yeah.
little like sticks that he was on, but it like it looks really good. And like I remember thinking, I was like, because I had forgotten that this happens, but I was like, it would be nice if he had a long tongue though. And then he grabs her
does.
with the long tongue, and I was like, yay!
There we go. It's that's the thing about this movie. It's definitely looking to the fans, trying to give you all the moments you long for in the Mario Brothers live action film.
I didn't get my moment when he grabs her with the tongue. I was like, if she doesn't come out the other end of him inside
an
an egg,
yeah.
I'm gonna be
We did.
dissatisfied. And sure enough,
Yeah, we did miss that. That was a missed
I was left
opportunity
hanging.
for sure. How did we feel about Daniela suddenly being kidnapped for some reason?
Well, she gets
Was
kidnapped
that
first. She gets kidnapped before Daisy.
Yeah,
oh,
like
I
at the
must have missed
beginning.
that.
Yeah,
when they,
yeah.
That's
Yeah, she gets
right.
They grab her by
'cause-
mistake or
Yes,
something.
that's
Yeah,
right.
because they say that they've been kidnapping random women in Brooklyn, and there's like there's again I think just a funny line of Iggy and Spike being like, "Are you sure that's her?" And he's like, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. It's got to be her. And I'm like, that's funny.
I like
good.
the introduction where he's just like smelling hot dogs.
Yes.
And he's like, they said it's dog, and then they eat it.
That's funny. That's
It's
a good
funny,
line.
It's good.
Okay, so I clearly missed long chunks of this film. I just was not paying attention to very important plot details. I do. Go ahead.
I want to talk about a scene that I love that we haven't brought up
Okay.
yet, which is also at the police station. I love the scene where Dennis Hopper comes in and pretends to be their lawyer, Larry Lazard.
Of Lazar and Lazar.
That was another inexplicable moment where I was like, "What is this? Just so they can meet him face to face, to know who he is?" Or because then he brings them into, like, they get arrested and then they are brought to the de-evolution room where there's really minimal kind of haphazard security that does almost nothing. They escape very easily and get out of the room, but
I mean, I like that he goes down there personally to just like for no reason just play act because he's a fucking maniac. I mean, it's also I love that he's like, oh no, you don't want to meet with King Koopa. He's an evil egg sucking son of a snake, and then he's like, hey, did I lie? That's good. Like, that's a fun exchange.
That's fair. So the big climactic finale. So they get the outfits. I agree. We need to save them for that big reveal in that moment. The elevator sequence, Trevor, as a video game composer, did you feel that the use of music in this particular sequence where all the Goombas start dancing was a touch of genius? Or how do you feel?
Love it.
Well, we missed the dancing earlier, right? Because we got it edited out of our version.
Yes.
And
Maybe they thought, like, we've got to put this in the movie.
Well, because then they save the day later by like making the Goombas dance.
Yeah, when Toad plays his set up and payoff.
So you got to set it up somehow, and I thought that was a pretty good setup. I was really surprised with how far they pushed it, though. I love the music, love the dancing, but I was like, how many times can we keep them out of eye shot of people entering this elevator and then turning around? It felt like something more out of a Spy Fox movie than a Mario movie. But
that's what I thought. I was like, they probably didn't have to get them to dance because they don't seem to be paying attention to them anyway. So the dancing is just an added bonus.
I mean, I like that it sort of ties in with Luigi's weird like gut instinct through line, where he's just like, I got a feeling, this is the thing to do. And I like that there's a nice little payoff, at the end with Mario, like, hey, I believe, now I've seen everything.
He's changed. He's the character arc is prevalent in this film.
He has an arc, my friends. He has an arc. And you know what is another thing I'll give this movie props for that I feel like would be such an easy like cliche to fall into is that there's no falling out moment between Mario and Luigi where they like get into a big fight and then get separated. I like that they just like each other the whole time. Like they're brothers and they're very loyal to each other, and that just doesn't change. And yet there's still conflict and drama. I feel like that trope is so prevalent in like any sort of buddy anything of just like third act they separate and then come back, or it's end of the second act or wherever that would go. They separate and then come back together. I appreciate that wasn't there.
Yeah, they're great in the movie. I know we've said that, but it really that's what shocked me is, again, it shows just the talents of both these guys who were like, you know what, we're just gonna have fun. I think like Leguizamo said in an anniversary interview where he was like, we knew this was going to be a disaster, so at a certain point we were like, you know what, we're just gonna enjoy ourselves. And I'm like, that's great, because how many movies we see where in the exact same situation where you just watch the thing that comes to mind, and it's probably because I think I saw this with both of you, actually. I know, Matt, I saw this with you because you made me go see it. You paid for my ticket. Max Payne, the film adaptation of Max Payne.
Sure, yeah.
Trevor, I don't know. It may have been Andrew Sisson. Somebody else was with us.
I was there for the era of like, let's go see this insane thing, but I think I skipped that
one. But Max Payne is a film where there is no joy from anyone on screen. Very clearly a mess of a film that I'm sure many of our listeners forgot existed until this very moment.
Me included.
But yes, so I think it just goes to show how valuable it is to have actors who are like, you know what, I'm going to commit and we're going to have fun and we're going to do this. And it does elevate this movie like 100%. The movie does not work as well as it does if those two guys were not like fully committed to the bit. And I really wish Bob Hoskins had a chance to listen to this podcast, really. But honestly, he was so negative. Like, it was such a negative experience for him that like his only comments while he was alive on the film were, I hated that experience. It was terrible, awful directors, really, really bad. Because I watched the movie and I'm like, he's given a really good performance.
He's a pro.
It's not the problem with the movie.
Hoskins, yeah.
I think he's a great Mario. I think John Leguizamo is a great Luigi. do the two look remotely related? Not really, but somehow they pull it off. And
but they're not blood related in this one. They do say that he's like a, well, I guess it's not clear if they're blood related or not, but that Luigi is an orphan and that Mario raised him. I'm not sure if they're both orphans.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So it seems like it is kind of like a found family sort of situation.
Right. Okay. A very quick throwaway line to explain why this happened. Why these guys are brothers.
And that's why that's why he connects with Daisy, because he's like, I'm an orphan too.
We're both.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
that's right. Again, wasn't paying attention.
I mean, I've seen so many movies that have like, you know, a 16th of the like energy and life that exists in this movie. Like this movie, which is just universally panned and hated by people, but I'm just like, there's so much like good, I feel like, buried in this movie that just gets completely overlooked because it has such a like joke of a reputation. And I really don't think that that's fair to this insane thing. And I think that the turmoil behind the scenes only makes it more impressive that the movie is coherent as it is, that it holds together as well, and that those elements are able to shine through.
Certainly makes it more interesting. Yeah,
absolutely. I know that at one point I think the editor locked the directors out of the editing room, and they had to get the guild involved, like, hey, we need to be in there to edit this movie. It is insane that the movie is, even though we've been harping on how weird and bizarre and at times like, why is this happening? What is going on here? It seems to have an internal logic that is not completely incoherent. There is a sense of like, there is a vision here. There is an executed vision that seems to align somewhat with what the intention was. I think it's just the attachment of the Mario Brothers franchise that throws everyone for a loop. But I'm kind of with you. Like, you know, I haven't seen the new Mario Brothers movie. And there's a part of me that, like, you know, was hoping that would be great and that would be wonderful and colorful and fun and like the video game.
It is colorful.
It is colorful. Yes. So, I mean, it has that on this movie. But like you said, Matt, this movie has this energy and this vibe that at the very least, I think we all agree, at the very least, even though this film, you couldn't necessarily call it a good movie,
I can and will.
Matt will. But there's something about it that elevates it beyond just like, it's a movie that as people are kind of reassessing it and looking at it, it does deserve somebody saying, look, it's not a perfect film, but these things are really impressive. And this, like, the production design is great. The effects are really solid. Like, all these elements are pretty good. It's just kind of the weird incoherence of a messed up script.
I think it's also like there was like a period in like early YouTube and like internet videos where there was people like the angry video game nerd and the nostalgia critic and these people who would build entire careers on the backs of like watching movies like this and just being like, this movie sucks. This is the worst thing ever made. This is like, I can't believe this. And like, I feel like that created a kind of like weird little like criticism bubble that exists still to this day of just like people that are very much just like, it's like reactionary film criticism, you know? It's like, it's all about like, just like, this is the worst movie ever, and like completely removing any nuance from the equation. And I feel like that is what has really like buried this movie. And as like you said, I think as people reassess it, they're able to see that like, wait a minute, there's actually like things of value here.
I think it's a very fun movie to like joke around about and to be like, what the heck, but not out of like hate for it or to tell people like, skip this one, it's terrible, because it's not boring, and it's worth having that joking discussion about it.
And I think it's also important to point out that like, it's when you say things like what the heck, this is so weird, it's like that's also like their intention. You're supposed to be feeling those things about this like insane world that you're thrown into. Like you're supposed to like the whole thing. I've seen so many of those like reactionary critics and whatever be like, why do they have a plumber alert? Like that's insane. And it's like, yeah, that's the joke. That's the joke that they have. That is an alert.
Well, it's the Max Headroom people. Like, it's like,
Yeah.
you know, their whole thing is like weird, disturbing, semi-dark, and kind of odd. And they bring that, like, I mean, that's what they got. That's why it's like there's a failure that is not necessarily beholden to these filmmakers. Like, I understand that they were difficult, that nobody liked working with them, but there's a feeling of like, okay, but it was the production behind the scenes. It was the people in the studio. And I think part of it was Disney ended up buying the film. Like, Hollywood Pictures was a division of Disney. And I think that's what really drove a lot of the decisions to, like, we have to make this more kid friendly. We have to cut out a lot of this stuff. And like the real, like, problems with the production and all the struggling and horrible stuff we've heard about. But it's like, to me, the problem is there at the core of it. Nintendo did not care about this movie. They were like, sure, do whatever you want, which is fine. But then, like, the studio that bought the script, agreed to the film, then freaked out and said, we need to change everything. Not completely unjustified, for not unjustified reasons, but it just felt like, didn't you know what you were getting into when you hired these people?
Yeah, and like, you know, when it comes to like adaptations, like this is the kind of adaptation that I feel like I want to see, where it's like, let's take elements and like adapt them and do something crazy. Like with that recent HBO show, The Last of Us, I don't think that was a bad show, but I do feel like a lot of it felt very redundant because they were just doing the cutscenes shot for shot, and universally, sure, I hear from people that their favorite parts were the parts that weren't in the game, the parts where they're like, you know, expanding on these ideas and like coming up with like new stuff. And it's like anytime I hear people get excited about a video game movie and they're just like, oh my god, I can't wait to see this scene and that scene, it's like, but you already played the game, you already saw that. Like, don't you want to see something like different? I mean, they're both visual mediums, and I don't know. I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but
no,
but
I think it's a good point. I think the movie is interesting. I think it the reason it doesn't work is because it's like, is this what a Mario Brothers movie is supposed to be? But I don't know what could have been a better live action Mario Brothers movie. You know, It doesn't lend itself to a live action format. So if you're gonna make that, you might as well make something that's so bizarre that we're here talking about it, completely baffled but kind of in awe of the final product.
I think people, from what Matt has said, people will forget about the 2023 Mario Bros. Movie maybe before they forget about this one.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly forgot about it until this conversation. It is a movie that is like utterly lifeless.
Well, go ahead and because I know we said you were gonna give the extended version review and a quick review of the 2023. I haven't seen it, Trevor. I don't think you saw it.
I mean,
so Matt, tell us a little bit more. We've already gotten some vibes from you about how you feel.
We know, like, the story is again like pretty much the exact same thing as this one, but the movie just feels like it feels like Nintendo was like looming over Illumination Studios and being like, you gotta put in the thing, you gotta put in the question mark block, you gotta have somebody punch the question mark block, and then but like also let's not like, you know, offend anybody or do anything too crazy. So like Peach shouldn't get kidnapped. Peach is very competent. In fact, she's the best at everything, and like it's everything in the movie feels so safe and so soulless. Like Chris Pratt is just like nothing. His performance is just nothing. Mario isn't really like much of a character in that one. Like I feel like the Mario in this one is like a guy that you could describe. Yes. And the Mario in the new one is very much just like he's a guy. I don't know.
He's there.
He wants to do good. Most of the voiceover performances are very clearly just like, let's get a celebrity. Like Seth Rogen's Donkey Kong is just Seth Rogen playing Seth Rogen. I think the scene that sums up the movie perfectly is there's a scene where they're like, okay, we have to get to Bowser's Castle. How are we going to get there? And they go, I know, let's go on Rainbow Road. And then they all go to a Mario Kart factory where they all get in Mario Karts, and then they drive on Rainbow Road. And you're like, why is this happening? Why are we doing this whole sequence? And it's like, well, because Mario Kart. You know Mario Kart, right? We're doing a Mario Kart now. Like, it doesn't feel like it's like connected to this like world. It's just like, here's the thing that you recognize.
Isn't it interesting that so the 1993 movie has its flaws and everything, but at the same time, this 2023 film, which is supposed to be like, this is the one you've been waiting for, is almost, it's like if 1993 is knocked for like, this movie has nothing to do with what Mario Brothers is, the movie that is so much closer is almost like, because it's so slavishly faithful, it irons out any opportunity for like life or a spark of creativity.
100%. There's a joke at the beginning of the movie that feels like a real slap in the face, where they're playing a Mario Brothers advertisement for like their plumbing company, and Chris Pratt and Charlie Day are like, wahoo, let's go, let's come to our plumbing, and they're doing like the Mario voices, and then it cuts to like them at their plumbing shop, and they're like, can you imagine if we talked like that? And I was like, fuck off. That sucks. I wish you talked like that. At least that would be a choice. At least it would be something.
What do we think in terms of final thoughts of the Super Mario Brothers film 1993? Any particular scenes we have not discussed that need to be thrown out there?
One more deleted scene I want to talk about. It's there's a scene where they're in the junkyard car that the Sniffets drive, which is another weird sequence. They're in the junkyard car with Iggy and Spike, and they're driving by propaganda posters for Koopa, which are all over the background of this movie. And Luigi is like, what's with all these posters? Like, who's Koopa the Sensitive and Koopa the Valiant and all this stuff? And Iggy explains that every election cycle, Koopa runs against other versions of himself, where he's like just different prominent personality traits, and he's like, well, last year Koopa the Sensitive only got 2% of the vote, but it seems like he's really on the rise this time.
Oh my god.
They're like, well, doesn't anybody ever run against him? And he goes, well, Koopa wouldn't like that, so no, I don't think so. And they go, Luigi goes, well, what kind of system of government is that? And Iggy and Spike look at each other and go, a democracy. I was like, that's fun. That should have been kept in the movie.
Amazing.
So it's that's it. Trevor, anything else that struck you as far as what you were expecting, what you weren't expecting, things that pleasantly surprised you, or have we pretty much covered it?
I was not expecting as much product placement as this movie had.
The Reeboks on the bottom of
the Reeboks on the bottom of the Bob-omb. And if I was the guy who put Evian water in this movie, I would not be happy, because I feel like people were having this conversation at the time of like, why are we bottling water? And that's what Mario says when he buys a clearly labeled bottle of Evian water and goes like, wow, they don't have tap water? That's gotta be in a bottle?
That is very
incredible. So garish product placement.
The
Bob-omb sequence is ridiculous. I like that there's a Bob-omb in the movie.
I like that everybody reacts so strongly to it. I like the guy in the car who like slams on the brakes for this tiny little thing walking across the street.
That it travels around the entire city, and somehow Mario really didn't have to do anything. He just had to get Koopa to stand in that spot. He just had to wind it up, yeah. Right, he wound it up, and then the Bob-omb found Koopa eventually and blew him up. Did the mushroom... There's a moment where they're in the real world and Mario uses the mushroom as a shield, where as a kid, I was convinced that it's like, wait, Mario, he gets bigger right before they go back to the Dino Land. And I thought that was supposed to be a reference. But if it was, it's not very clear.
I think the only reference there is just that he uses a mushroom. I don't think it's
Why does he uses the mushroom, and then when they're fading back, he gets inexplicably larger. Like, he gets much taller. I'm telling you, go back and watch it. I don't know why. And
I think
always,
you might
as a
be
kid,
losing your mind.
But no, as a kid, I always thought, like, is that supposed... I guess that's a reference to, like, oh, he used a mushroom, so he gets bigger. But then when he's back in Dino World, he's just normal size. But I swear it happened. I swear.
I mean, maybe like that's part of the like weird like getting whisked away to between worlds where they like it's like in Jumanji when they get sucked into the board game.
That's right.
When they merge the realms.
That's another relatively disturbing children's film that was made.
Jumanji.
Oh
yeah.
Jumanji? Yeah, absolutely. And they're both of those movies are so gooey.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to compare this movie to Jumanji, I think it's a real testament to practical effects, because the practical effects in this movie have aged perfectly.
Yes.
And go back and look at the monkeys in Jumanji, which look awful.
I forgot about that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Oh, man, they look so bad.
I have a question about the end of this movie, maybe that can like tie things in a bow here, but
just like
there's a
Birdo
fungus
wears.
king. Exactly. There's a fungus king that gets like re-evolved into a king, and he's like sitting on the throne. I was like, who is this? I double checked the IMDb page. Lance Henriksen is credited as King Bowser. So did they just like reinstitute Bowser at the end of this movie?
Wait, he's King Bowser?
He's credited as King Bowser on IMDb.
I don't think it's ever said. I don't think they ever say his name in the movie. They only ever refer to him as the king.
The king. Okay.
I mean, I think it's important to point out that the name Bowser does not exist in Japan. In Japan, he is just King Koopa, the character.
I didn't know that.
Okay.
Yeah, Bowser is purely for the localization when the original game came over, and I think that that's a very bizarre choice if they did name the king of the Mushroom Kingdom Bowser.
Yeah,
but he is.
What's interesting is on Wikipedia he's referred to as the king, but on IMDb he is King Bowser.
Yeah, they definitely don't say his name even in the cut that I watched. They only ever refer to him as the king. Though I do like the line where, and normally this is the kind of line that I would hate, but I liked it in this, where King Koopa is like, and you wanted your kingdom back? Well, now you can have it, your cursed Mushroom Kingdom. And I was like, it's all right. That's
right.
You know
That's
what?
right.
You earned it.
Matt's into it.
You earned
Matt
it.
He gives this movie so many free passes.
I'm sorry, they earned it. Look, they earned it.
They earned it. They went through a lot. Look, Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, everyone involved went through a lot. Apparently the teaser at the end of the film where Daisy practically kicks down their door and is like, "You guys are not going to believe," and that's setting up a sequel was supposed to just be a reference to Back to the Future and nothing else, which is funny because Back to the Future did that as a gag in the first movie with no intention of doing a sequel.
Yeah, so, I always just kind of assumed that it was a gag at the end of this movie too. They're just goofing. Did you guys watch the post-credits scene?
Nope.
So there is a post-credit scene in the Mario Brothers movie in both cuts.
Okay.
And it is.
Are they're the same scene?
It's a slightly longer in the extended cut, but it's pretty
Okay.
much the same scene. And it is this is something that was literally in the original pitch to Nintendo, that somehow made it across like every single draft. But the movie ends with there's two Japanese executives who are talking off camera to somebody, and they're like, "We have heard of your exploits, and we would like to turn it into a video game." And then the camera pans over, and they're talking to Iggy and Spike, and they're like, "The Super Koopa Cousins."
My God. That's incredible.
How
did I didn't even see that as a kid.
There was the original pitch for this movie to Nintendo was going to be that it was like, this is the like real events, and then at the end of the movie it would reveal that like the Mario Brothers game is like a telephoned version of what we just saw.
So in reality, the Mario Brothers video game is a bad adaptation of
this movie. Yeah, basically.
Yes. Ultimately,
as
that's what we've
recounted,
learned.
I guess by Spike and Iggy.
Oh my God. Okay. If you could go back, Shawn, and edit out anything that I said that sounded like a criticism, or now that I have that context,
I think
really
we're
don't
all
wanna be
giving
out
this
on a
film
limb
5
here.
stars.
I'm surprised you never watched that. Yeah, no, I remember even seeing that.
I'm
as a
shocked.
kid.
Yeah, because I genuinely loved this movie as a kid, and I couldn't bear to sit through the music. I do love that the first end credit is the title. It's like the song Almost Unreal by whoever the band was.
Roxanne, yeah.
That's the first credit that they show at the end of the movie is the
There
song.
must have been some sort of
playing over the
agreement
credits.
with her when they brought
it
her
had
in.
to have been. So was there anything in the Mario Brothers game, Matt, that you wish had been in the movie? Both of you, really. Is there anything you wish had been in the movie? Maybe Mario using a shell to knock somebody out?
Surprisingly, not many shells in this movie, which I think is an interesting choice. I would have liked to have seen Mario get in the big boot from Mario 3 and hop around in the big wind-up boot. But I guess he does get boots that make him jump.
Yes.
Which as a kid, I legitimately had the thought watching that movie for the first time where I was like, oh, that explains why they jump so high. Like they got they got those things on their boots. Like it all makes sense.
The stompers.
I just wish there had been more jumping. Like,
yeah,
it's
I
like
agree.
the main game mechanic. I wish there was more of them. Like
They don't
around.
jump on a single person.
It
in
is
this
surprising
movie.
that they don't have them at least like jump on like the head of a Goomba with
I
that.
remember
And I
when
wonder
they
if that was in the original cut or something, or like or that was something that was scrapped or something.
Right.
When they de-evolve them, I was like, that makes so much sense. Their heads are so small so that they can stomp on them, and then they never do.
happened. I feel like there has to be a question mark box reference in this film somewhere. There's so much in this movie visually. I feel like it probably doesn't exist, but there's such an opportunity for like graffiti or a car decal or something to have a question mark box. For that not to
feel
be in
like it is. I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that there is, because there's a lot of stuff in the background. There's like the Thwomp Club and like the Boom Boom Bar that's named after the mini boss from Mario 3. So there is like a lot of like little things like that, and in the cartridges for the boots are bullet bills.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
That was cute.
So I feel like there must be. I mean, again, like as a kid, I think I thought that this was a movie that was like ashamed of its source material, but I really don't think so. I think that there's a surprising amount of like attention to detail to just like put in little stuff like that.
That's how I feel too. Is it feels like it's not necessarily the right vision, but it's like not a like it's not a vision that's ashamed. It's not a vision that is like mocking. It's very clearly like we're gonna do this, but we're also like putting stuff from the video game in the movie.
Another thing that I think you got to give this movie credit for that the new movie certainly does not shy away from is there's no lamp shading in this movie. There's no like King Koopa, what kind of name is that? Or like can you imagine if we were jumping on people's heads with these things? Like the new movie is all about that of just like, what are these weird guys? Are they hats or what? And just like so many lines like that, and it's just nauseating.
Yeah, that depresses me more than I think the entire viewing experience of the 1993 film. But all right, well, this was a great experience. We have to do our final ratings. What should be the rating object? Do we want to do how many
the
bombs?
meteorite piece? That was the MacGuffin
how many
of the
meteorite?
movie.
Yeah. So we'll do. How many meteorite pieces would you give this film, Trevor, on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest and 1 being the lowest?
Oh my gosh. As a piece of art, like pretty low, but as a like should I go experience this and then talk about it with my friends, like 5. You should watch this movie and get it in your brain. It deserves a little space there.
That's fair.
And in your heart.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, how about
5.
you?
5. No question.
Why am I not surprised?
No question.
I
It rules. This movie rules.
I'm giving it a 2, but I also think this is a film that, in the back of everyone's mind, they've already like, oh, it's a half-star movie. I saw it and it was terrible, and I don't think it's that level of bad. I think it's like it's a misguided film, but like the execution is shockingly on point considering how much of a mess it is, and it's worth watching, and there's cool stuff in it.
I'm going to do one last Dune comparison and say that
Sure.
This movie is similar to the 1984 Dune, where I don't think that it's necessarily like Well, actually, you know what? I think that this is a better movie than David Lynch's Dune.
I enjoyed watching this more. Yeah.
I think that both movies have like that interesting problem where it's like, this isn't like necessarily a successful adaptation, but the stuff that's going on in this movie, I can't look away.
Exactly. That you have to pay credit to that, because that's how I felt watching this. Is I was like, I don't really like this, but like, there's a lot of style to what's on display here, and that's undeniable, and I feel like that's something that's gotten lost in the conversation.
And the performances in this movie are significantly better than the performances in Dune.
They are. I think that's what surprised me, is I thought in the back of my mind, like, I'd dressed up the Mario Brothers performances, but they're great. I think
so
Bob
good.
Really, we should have done Bob Hoskins and Leguizamo's. How many Bob Hoskins did we get? But you know, we can't be perfect. We can't not every one of these episodes can be a knockout.
Another little stupid trivia thing we should put in about this movie is that Bob Hoskins broke his hand while they were shooting, and you can see the cast towards the end of the movie. You can see in some of the shots they painted it the color of his skin to try to like hide it, but particularly like at the end with his like big fight with Koopa, if you look at his hand you can see the cast over his hand, because the door of the Mario Brothers van slammed shut on his hand and broke his hand.
To be fair, he was very drunk when he was operating that vehicle. So
John Leguizamo was driving, and he was in fact drunk while driving, which is why that happened.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you both. Trevor, I'm so glad that you got a kick out of the movie, because it certainly is a movie that kicks. Absolutely.
I feel like we got to do Double Dragon. You've never seen Double Dragon, right, Shawn?
I've never seen it. I'd be down for that. I think that would be a blast.
The three of us should reunite, because that movie's wild.
I feel like I've seen bits and pieces, but never the whole thing all the way through. So we may have to. When they do the animated 2024 Double Dragon film with obvious references and lots of mugging for the camera.
Here's what I'll tell you about the movie is that the villain was written to be Japanese, but they got Robert Patrick to play the character, so they put in a monologue where he explains why he goes by a Japanese name, and he has like a bleached blonde, like spiked up, like Guy Fieri do.
I'm shocked they tried to explain it at all, because I feel like again this is the era where they weren't trying to explain
that
things
movie's
like that. They did not care.
Wild. There's a scene where they go to kick Robert Patrick, and they miss, and they kick a Double Dragon arcade cabinet and destroy it.
What is that implying?
I don't know.
What is that supposed to mean?
I don't know, but I'm so glad it's in the movie.
You know what it's implying, Matt? It's this ain't no game.
Oh no, this ain't no game. That
Absolutely.
much is for sure. Well, I can't wait until we all reunite for that Double Dragon episode, which I will pester you until it happens.
I believe it. So, Trevor, first time on Missing Frames, it was an absolute joy getting to talk with you again and have you on. If the good people at home want to see the amazing work you're doing, or if they want to follow your exploits on social media, where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. Search Trevor Whitaker Black on what your preferred social media site is. I'm Trevor W. Black on Twitter, probably there most often. And thank you so much for having me. I have to say, at the beginning of this movie, I was like, what have I gotten myself into? But by the end of this conversation, I'm very grateful that I got to be a part.
Aww.
That means so much to me. And Matt, where can the people find you?
Well, you can find my wonderful touring show and accompanying audio material at the Saga of the Shining Emblem on Instagram. If you live in New York and you're listening to this, you better come see the show. We do it monthly at the Brick Ox in Brooklyn, so come see the show. And also Street Fighter the movie. We should do Street Fighter the movie also, because that movie also kind of rules.
I've seen that one. I've seen that one, but I would love to watch.
Trevor, have you seen Street Fighter the movie?
This doesn't have to go in, but I have like a core memory where the three of us and maybe some other people watched some movie. I think it was a video game adaptation of something, and it was in someone's house who had a cat. So I was having really bad allergies, and I took a Benadryl. And I remember like being half awake for an entire movie on one of your floors, I think.
It
Must have been Matt's
it must
because
have
I
been
didn't
my
have a
house.
cat. Yeah.
And
Okay.
it must have been. I'm willing to bet dollars to donuts that that movie was Mortal Kombat Annihilation. knowing Shawn and I think it was almost certainly Mortal
definitely.
Kombat Annihilation.
Absolutely. Well, I am at Yay Shawn Dorman on Twitter. I'm Shawn Dorman05 on Letterboxd. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we will see you at the movies.